Alrighty, everybody. So let's go ahead and talk about accident and incident investigations. This is a module 225. So 85 to 95% of all accidents and incidents are behavioral based. That means that they're actually considered unsafe acts. So we either have unsafe conditions or unsafe acts. Example of an unsafe condition would be maybe a damaged ladder or water on the ground. An unsafe act or an unsafe condition would be somebody who chooses to use that ladder or fails to properly inspect it, or maybe someone who works in an area that's got a wet floor, or they track through it, or they fail to put a caution sign out. So that's the difference between an unsafe condition and an unsafe act. So accidents, incidents, and near misses, they all have to be investigated. And the reason we have to investigate them is that we have to determine what the direct, indirect, and root causes were for each of them. So we'll be talking about that during this module. Root causes, that's what we're ultimately trying to identify as a root cause. And a root cause has to be corrected. And why do we need to correct it? So that we can prevent similar events from happening in the future. You know, it's funny what you'll find during an investigation. Some investigations, they might result in 10 to 27 contributing factors. So think about that. As few as 10 contributing factors and as many as 27 to any given incident, accident, or near miss. And what we have to do is that we have to address all those contributing factors in addition to the direct, indirect, and especially the root causes of an accident. So we're not only going to be investigating accidents or incidents, but we're also going to be investigating near misses. So let me move here to the right. So as we continue talking, let me go ahead and define what an accident, an incident, and a near miss actually is. So an accident, and these are OSHA definitions, y'all, okay? An accident is an unplanned event that results in an injury and illness or property damage or to the environment. Maybe like a material release, like a chemical release or something. They have an immediate consequences, right? And they're recorded for analysis and prevention. So example of one might be like where a worker slips on a wet floor and it results in a broken arm. That's an accident. An incident is a little bit broader term, and OSHA basically says that an incident is any unplanned event, whether it results in an injury, illness, or damage or not. Incidents encompass both accidents and near misses. So when you hear an incident, normally an incident will either be an accident or an incident will be a near miss. So an example of an incident is maybe like a minor equipment malfunction that does not result in an injury, but it disrupts the production temporarily of a company. That's an incident, but that might also be a near miss, or it might also be an accident. Okay, and then near miss. Near miss is an unplanned event that could have caused injury, illness, or damage, but it didn't. It was strictly due to chance, right? Or the quick reaction of an employee, or some type of preventative barrier that we might have had in place at the time. Under any other circumstances, that near miss, it could have ended up being some type of accident or incident. Near misses, they're equally as important to go ahead and investigate and report on them as well, so that we can provide opportunities to address hazards before they result in harm in the future. Okay, so not only do we want to try to identify the direct, indirect, and root causes, as well as the contributing factors of an accident, incident, but also of a near miss as well. An example of this might be something like a tool falls from a scaffold and it narrowly misses the employee or someone down below. Okay, it's important that organizations make these distinctions between an accident, incident, and near miss, so that we can monitor, investigate, and mitigate any type of potential risk effectively in order to prevent any harm, injuries, or illnesses in the future. Okay, so now let me jump back to the left, folks. So here we go. So let's pick up where we left off. Safety department or safety personnel should consult and help facilitate the investigation. So in most of our organizations, safety normally does the investigation. But as most of you know, that in theory, the frontline supervisor, so the foreman, team lead, should actually be conducting the investigation, but we have to train those personnel to do the investigations, and that's where we usually have a deficiency, okay? But in theory, we want to remember this, and this is the way it's supposed to be done. We all know that safety departments normally do the investigation, but in theory, who should do the investigation? It should be the frontline supervisor or the foreman. And if the accident involves more than one group, let's say it's a group of painters and a group of sheetrockers, or a machinist group and let's say heavy equipment like a forklift or a crane that's picking up a piece of equipment, if it involves more than two groups, and then it should be the next level supervisor. So frontline supervisor, foreman, team lead should normally do the investigation. Safety should help facilitate it. If it involves more than one business unit, more than one business unit or group, and then it should be two, it should be the next level supervisor that should be investigating. Investigations, what are they? They're fact-finding missions, okay? And they should not be biased. And what they do is they help us obtain an accurate picture of what happened. Investigations identify problems, but they shouldn't seek blame. So whenever you see a company and they're doing an investigation, they shouldn't really be looking at an employee getting in trouble or being punished or terminated. It should be, hey, let's figure out what the systematic problem is here. Right? Let's identify that problem, let's fix it, and let's not blame a person, let's blame the problem. Personnel should be trained or retrained and not punished, since most root causes are management level deficiencies. Now, when we say management level deficiencies, what are we talking about, right? We're talking about policies, procedures, programs, processes, training programs. All of these different tools should be in effect. And normally when something fails, that's normally at the level of which it fails. So one thing we should do during accident investigations, and you'll see this throughout the slides, is ask open-ended questions. It's essential. It's similar to the 5 whys or the sequence of events. We should also avoid closed-ended questions like answering yes or no when possible. One of the biggest things is try to interview one witness at a time. You don't want what you don't want is other team members or coworkers to be correcting the statements of an employee, whether it's actual or not. Okay, it kind of starts to taint your investigation. So ask open-ended questions, right? Similar to the 5 whys or sequence of events, like I said, avoid closed-ended questions and try to ask open-ended questions, okay? Interview one employee at a time or one worker at a time, and where the conversation's private, in a cooperative environment, like an open space, vehicle, or even where the event occurred. One of the best places to interview employees is where the actual event occurred. But like I said, you really just wanted to keep it with whoever's doing the investigation and the interviewee if possible. The best place for interviews is where that event occurred, exactly what I just mentioned. And an investigation, when is your investigation actually complete? And you'll see this on one of the slides. It's once you submit your report. Now, there may be some questions that come back at you, but when the investigation is actually considered complete is once we submit our report to management. So let's talk about root cause analysis now, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about levels 1, 2, and 3 of a root cause. So this is what I tell people, and I'm gonna share what's on the screen, what you're looking at on the screen, but I'm also want to share some examples with you as well. Okay, so level 1, the direct cause, it's how did the employee actually get injured or become ill? How did they get cut, a strain, a burn, poison, fall, execution, etc.? Okay, I'm going to show you some examples on the right-hand side. Level 2, what was indirect? The best thing you could probably answer is this. What was the employee or what were the employees doing wrong at the time? What was the at-risk behavior, right? What was that the employee was performing at that time? That is normally the 2 best ways that you can get to the indirect answer, and it's going to help us get to our root. Okay, so what do I mean by unsafe or at-risk behaviors? Performed by workers, well, maybe using tools or equipment with missing guards or broken guards, using equipment or tools that haven't been inspected before their shift, using equipment or tools that may be damaged, right? Workers running, horseplaying, ignoring rules, working in areas with slip, trip, or fall hazards, or maybe low lighting, elevated work without guardrails or personal fall arrest, or maybe even working on electrical systems that are energized and we did not properly apply or at all apply a lockout tagout system or device to it. Those are all examples of indirect causes, okay? And then in the end, what's the root cause? The root cause is the underlying issue, and it's normally a management level deficiency. Doesn't mean management to personnel, it means management as a whole. What do I mean by that? Well, maybe our company or organization or safety department or operations has outdated or no policies or procedures or process or permits at all. Maybe they're inadequate, right? Or training is inadequate, or no training programs or requirements to attend training. Maybe we say, hey, everybody's going to attend training, but we're not taking roll. No accountability, no discipline, no interventions, no retraining that's currently doing or consistently being done. Okay, it's not that it's just not being done, but it needs to be done consistently and uniformly across the organization. Or maybe the company's got a lack of inspections, audits, observations, and investigations. Those are all perfect examples of root cause analysis, okay? So we're gonna bundle these together, and I'm gonna show you right here on the right. I'm gonna show you 4 different examples to show you how this works, okay? So first of all, why is a root cause analysis so important? Well, a root cause analysis, it allows an employer to discover the underlying or systemic deficiencies rather than just generalized or immediate causes of an accident or an incident, right? Correcting only an immediate cause may eliminate a symptom of a problem, but not the whole problem itself. So remember this, we must first identify the root problem in order to implement a solution. So let me show you what I'm talking about right here. I'll give you 4 examples. Example number 1. Let's say a worker is punched in the face or the nose, right? Well, that's my direct cause. How did my employee get hurt? They took a punch to the face or the nose. What was my indirect cause? Well, I had 2 or more employees horseplaying. And what's the root cause? Level 3 root, which is there's no policy or training against horseplay. Or maybe there's no accountability, right? Supervisors watching employees horseplay and that he or she are not stopping the employees. Or maybe the employees are not being disciplined somehow, either through maybe retraining, right? Or time off, or just calling their attention and having a discussion or an intervention. All of those are examples of failures of root causes, okay? So remember this, folks, it's always gonna be 3 levels, right? So let me go back to the left. So level 1, direct cause. Level 2, indirect cause. Level 3, root cause. This is how I remembered. What is the one thing an employee came into contact with when they got hurt, right? Was it a knife, a broken guard, a saw blade, right? Maybe strains, pulls, muscles. Maybe they were lifting too much weight and pulled the muscle, right? Poisonings, they were exposed to chemicals or some kind of poisonous plant. Falls or electrocutions. These are all examples of the one thing that they came into contact with that they got hurt. Level 2 is what were they doing wrong at the time? And it doesn't mean that the employee was misbehaving. Maybe it's the employee wasn't properly trained, okay, or aware, or complacent. And then level 3 is the root cause, management level issue, and we have to fix the root in order for that problem to go away. So now let me go back to the right, y'all. So example 1, right, like I said, the employee got punched in the face or the nose. What's the one thing that the employee came into contact with? A fist or a 2x4 to the face of the nose. What led to the issue? Level 2, what led to the issue? The employees were horseplaying. And level 3 for tree root, there's no policy or training against horseplay. There's no accountability program, right? There's no training program. That's all perfect examples of root causes. Okay, example number 2, a worker cuts off their finger using a chop saw. What is the one thing an employee came into contact with? Was the blade cut the finger. That's level 1, direct. What's level 2? Level 2 is the worker was using the saw with a broken or missing guard, or maybe the employee had improper hand placement. That's what the employee was doing wrong at the time. That's what led to the injury, level 2. And what's level 3? Level 3 is that there's either no inspection of tools or equipment, maybe no competent person inspections going on in the area by the supervisor, right? Or maybe a equipment removal procedure, or lacking training, okay, or accountability again. So it's always a management level issue when it is a root cause. Example number 3, a worker's electrocuted doing electrical work in a panel. What happened? Okay, well, the employee was electrocuted. That's the level 1, direct cause. What led to that issue? The employees weren't using lockout tagout. And then what's the root? Why were the employees not using lockout tagout? Well, maybe they weren't trained. Maybe there wasn't adequate supervision. Maybe there was no policy or no procedure. So again, and you'll hear me repeat it over and over again, level one is what's the one thing that the employee came into contact with. In this case, it is electricity. And they were shocked or electrocuted. Level two, what led to this? Our employees did not lockout tag out the equipment. And then level three, root cause, what ultimately happened? There was a lack of either training, lack of supervision, no policy or no procedure. Okay. And then we have example 4 here, the fourth example, which is a worker steps on a nail. Look at this picture to your left. Worker steps on a nail and needs a tetanus shot. So what was the level one, a direct cause of the accident? Employee stepped on a nail, punctured the foot, employee needed a tetanus shot. What led to this? Well, either poor housekeeping, right? Somebody left all this wood with nails around. Maybe there's no policy or procedure when they remove wood to either bend all the nails down, put all the wood in a pile where someone's not going to get cut, either step on it or cut by crossing near it. Okay. And also the employee didn't inspect the work area, or the employee was just walking over the boards and not moving them because they did recognize them. So it could be any of those, could be a level two. But in the end, what's level three? Lack of training, no policy, no procedure. If you notice all of these four, right, all of these, the level three is management level. It's almost always going to be no policy, no procedure, no program, no recognition program, no training, no accountability. It's almost going to be the same thing, which is a systematic issue. And if we fix a systematic issue, these types of accidents should not happen again. Okay? All right, so let's keep on moving on. And let's talk about the 5 whys. This is one of the methods to do an accident investigation in order to get to the root cause. So we can do a root cause analysis, which is what we just talked about, right? Doing level 1, 2, and 3 levels of causation. Or we can do a 5 why method as well. So a 5 why, first of all, hey, we come up with what's the problem statement, right? We're going to keep on asking why. How many times? 5. That's why it's called 5 why, in order to try to get to that root cause as well. So 5 whys method and sequence of events leads to the reasons of the failure. So that's the whole reason why 5 why method and sequence of events is what we're doing is we're asking the questions in a sequence where one question will take us to the next, and hopefully within or around that 5 questions, we should get to the root cause of the issue. So it's a simple tool, it's an effective tool, and we use it in accident investigations to gather data and identify the root causes of an accident by asking why, right? Multiple times until the underlying cause is revealed. So example scenarios, let me give you an easy one, right? Is a worker slips on a wet floor. Well, question number 1 might be, why did the worker slip on the wet floor? Well, the answer is because the floor was wet, right? Of course, we all know that. Well, question number 2, why was the floor wet? And if you notice, we're asking open-ended questions, not closed-ended questions, right? Not yes or no questions. So let me start over, right? Q1, question 1, why did the worker slip on the floor? Answer, because the floor was wet. Question number 2, why was the floor wet? Well, because water was spilled and it wasn't cleaned up. Question number 3, why was the water spilled not cleaned up? Well, answer, because there were no signs or procedures in place to address spills immediately. Question 4, why were there no signs or spill cleaning procedures? Well, because the safety protocols did not include specific guidelines for spill management. And then question 5, why was there no spill procedure? Because there was no comprehensive review or up-to-date safety procedures to include in those scenarios. So again, it will always come down to a management level deficiency, management level failure. Again, not against the managers themselves, but against the system. And it will always come back to a lack of a policy, procedure, process, program, accountability, recognition, okay, all of those. And conclusion, by repeatedly asking why, the investigation reveals that the root is the lack of a safety procedure that includes spill management. The organization can then address this root cause by updating the policies and procedures and training employees to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. So this could have been a slippery substance, this could have been a toxic chemical, and it would follow the same processes and procedures for the most part. So that's called, like I said, so I want to recap, it's called a 5 why method. We keep on asking why until we can get to the root cause. It's also called a sequence of events, okay? And the purpose is asking why in those sequence of events. So why? So we can get to the root cause. All right, great. So let's talk about conducting that interview, right? Whether you're using the 5 why method, whether you're using root cause analysis, whether you're using any other accident investigation methods, okay? What are things that we want to do for certain? Well, we want to keep and present all information in a logical order. You know, chronological is great, but you have to have logic first. So a story has to make sense. So make sure that first and foremost, whenever you're obtaining information, you know, keep it orderly, right? Keep it in a logical order. Maybe all your witness statements together, right? All your photos separately together. You know, any diagram separately together. And that's what I mean by logically ordered, okay? Also, ask those open-ended questions, like we said, in the root cause analysis or 5 why. Ask those open-ended questions instead of yes or no questions. Listen, and also allow witnesses time to tell their story in their own words. Let's try not to help them too much to find the word. Let them find it. Let's give them some time, okay? Also, ask follow-up and clarification questions. Take notes when possible. If you're going to record it, or if your company has a requirement to record it, right, get permission or make them aware that the interview is being recorded. When possible, have the witness write a statement and have that witness sign and date that statement if possible. You know, some employees don't really write as well as others. Okay, so that's why recordings may be handy. But if they're able to write it, I tell people, have them write it in simple sentences or have them write it in bullet points. Don't worry about punctuation, and grammar. Keep your opinion out of the interview. Way too many times, I think, and even me, sometimes we try to, our bias or our opinions start getting involved in the interview. Keep all that out. We're there for information gathering. We're there on a fact-finding mission. Okay, that's our job, is to gather information. We're on a fact-finding mission so that we can put our investigation together. Okay. Also, end on a positive note. Hey, you know, somebody might have been hurt, right? It might have been significant property damage. Somebody might even be hospitalized. Let's try to end on a positive note that maybe there weren't any other injuries, right? Or maybe that it could have been far worse than it was. And most importantly, hey, let's start improving now so that we can be better, okay? Leave your contact information. That way they can contact you if they need you, okay? When conducting an interview, don't do these things. Don't intimidate, interrupt, or prejudice the witness, right? Let's not put thoughts into the witness's head that may give them a difference of opinion, or what they want to share with us. Assist the witness. Don't assist them in answering the questions, right? Unless it's something that you absolutely have to answer. Again, like above, give them that time. Give them the ability to use their own words to get us there, okay? Don't ask leading questions. An example of a leading question is this. Doug, when that crane dropped the load, you were over by the tool crib, weren't you? That's a leading question. Instead, I should have asked, Doug, when the incident happened, where were you located? That's a better question, all right? Or, Doug, how many workers were in your group today? 6? Who was it? Pete, Mary, Jane, Beth? No, it's, Doug, how many workers were in your group today, and can you give me the names? Okay, that's how we get away from leading questions. Also, don't become emotionally involved in the investigation. Be nice, be compassionate, right? Be diligent within your work, be responsible, but we have to keep our emotions, good or bad, have to keep our emotions out of it. Okay? Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's just gather that evidence. We're there as a scribe for this employee and for the company and all other employees, and our responsibility is to gather evidence, and we're on a fact-finding mission. That's what we're there for. Okay, don't reveal the discoveries of your investigation. Just grab their part of the investigation and limit what you say, because you may be speaking about certain information that is private or maybe has not even been vetted yet to make sure that it was accurate. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't promise people they won't get in trouble. Don't promise people they're going to get a copy of the report. I tell people this: read your policy and procedure for your work company all the way down to an accident investigation and root cause analysis procedure. And whatever the policy or procedure says, that's what I'm going to stick to. Okay? All right, so let's talk about some examples of some open-ended questions that we can ask, right? Instead of asking yes or no questions. Hey, where were you at the time of the incident? What were you doing at that time? You can even ask things like that aren't on this list, right? Like, what time did you start? Who was there? Okay, what time did you become aware of the incident? Also, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you smell if it was maybe a chemical release or a fire? What did you feel? Maybe it was something that included heat, right? Or vibration, or rumbling, or pressure. What were the environmental conditions, right? What was the weather like at the moment? Was there any light? Was there any noise? What was the injured worker doing at the time of the event? Had that practice been previously performed? If you were doing a lift, right? Had y'all done that type of lift before? If you were doing a confined space entry, had y'all ever entered that type of space before? In your opinion, what caused the accident? But be cautious of opinions. I tell people who, what, when, where, why are really great questions. Why can be a loaded question, right? Who, what, when, where, how. And why, yes, we have to ask it in the 5 whys. We have to ask it sometimes in just open-ended questions in the accident investigation and root cause. But really careful of why, because why will often become an opinion if we're not careful, okay? Or a long drawn out or maybe even incorrect opinion. How might similar incidents be prevented in the future? I might ask an employee that, or a group, right? Hey, how would you prevented this from happening? Or what are your thoughts on how we could prevent this in the future? Perhaps they can give us some insight to either additional, let's say, indirect or root causes that may be need addressed or contributing factors, or maybe they have actually a solution that management can look at and consider. Maybe even ask, were any other witnesses around, right? Were there any other employees working at that time? Do you know their names? Do you know what company they're with? Do you know what positions they hold? How are you connected with the others involved in the incident? Again, do you work with the same company? Is it a third-party contractor? How are you familiar with them? Have you been trained in whatever we're doing, right? If we're doing a 2-crane lift, have you been trained in working around a 2-crane lift? Have you been trained working on elevated work using a personal fall arrest system? Okay, did you and your group fill out a JSA, a job safety analysis, or a task safety analysis, or a hazard analysis today? Do you do one every day? What do you remember being on the JSA today? Or do you know the last time whatever was inspected? The fire extinguisher was inspected, the ladder was inspected, the power cord was inspected, right? That particular safety data sheet binder was inspected. So it all goes back to depending on what incident we're investigating at that time. And then last of all is analyzing all that data. So we capture all this data, right? And if you look down here at the chart, I like this, right? What we're trying to do is we're collecting data. We define the problem. We're trying to figure out what the problem is, right? What was the injury? What was the illness? All right, and then we go collecting data, right? We had an employee fall and break a leg, right, from elevated work surface. That's our problem. So now we start collecting all that data. How do we do it? Investigations, interviews, right? Collecting evidence, okay? We collect all that data, and our department, normally a safety department, but management should really be involved or even lead the investigation, but it normally doesn't happen. But throughout the team of the organization, we should try to identify possible causal factors, meaning contributing factors, right? Or direct, indirect, and root causes. And it all goes down to getting down to that root cause. Once we get that root cause, What are we trying to do with it? Implement a solution, right? What do we call it in our industry? That's our corrective action to either eliminate that risk or control it the next time. And we're going to monitor those solutions to make sure that the implementation of our new safety solutions are working. Okay, so let's talk about analyzing that data. To determine the causes of accidents, incidents, near misses, right? Um, we have to, it's a reactive examination of the factors that led to that injury or illness, right? Or that near miss. Okay, incidents can be caused by various factors. It can be multi-causation or it can be one single factor, right? Either root causes or a root cause. Like we said, you'll see a lot of recap here, right? Studies show that the incident could be attributed to 10 to 27 different contributing factors, meaning that, hey, maybe weather or lighting or noise, right, or walking surfaces were a contributing factor, but maybe they weren't the direct, indirect, or root cause of the accident. Okay. A perfect example with that, let's say if I have an employee working an elevated work surface, right, and they fall over the guardrail because they were bending over or stretching too far over the guardrail to try to do some kind of connection on an electrical connection, right, or cleaning a surface. Well, being dark or early in the morning or morning dew, all of this may have been a contributing factor to the fall, but it wasn't a direct, indirect, or root cause of the fall, because maybe the direct was the employee falling to the ground and harming themselves. The indirect was the employee was leaning over the guardrail, exceeding the limitations of extending the guardrail. And the root cause was failure to train, right, policy, procedure. But like I said, weather, time of day, deadlines could have all been contributing factors, but not necessarily one of the causes. Okay, but we definitely want to address contributing factors as well, because it'll help us prevent incidents in the future. Incident analysis, it often discovers the direct causes of that injury or illness, the surface causes of that incident, and then the root causes, like we said, there can be one or more, and they're almost always at a management level. Okay, so if you look below, there's a few notes here, right? So there are many ways of gathering and examining that data. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about things like I said, root cause analysis, 5 whys, right? You have different accident causation models. All right. Also, we want to pull historical data. Historical data is anything that's already happened. That's called a lagging indicator. And it's important, but it's not nearly as important as leading indicators. Leading indicators are always way more important, which are the results of our inspections, audits, observations, right? Identified hazards. How did we fix that hazard? How long did it take us to fix that hazard? Do we have the same hazard that are happening in other areas of the workplace? Okay, similar hazards. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about predictive or leading indicators, right? Have we participated in training? Is the training up to date? How are the opinions or the surveys of the employees about our program? Those are all leading indicators, okay? Also, data analysis must be completed before making any changes. And procedural changes to lower or eliminate injuries or illnesses. That's what it's all about, is we would rather eliminate injuries and illnesses, but at a minimum, we have to significantly lower them. And investigative processes and practices, what are they going to include? Well, maybe we need to visit the site of the incident, right, and collect photos or videos, or maybe make measurements with a measuring wheel or a measurement tape sometimes at the scene, right? We have to gather evidence that may have contributed to the incident. Also, if you're going to be gathering evidence, hey, if it's physical objects, do you have to rent like a Connex box or a roll-off container to put the material in, or a little mini storage somewhere, right? Or even all the way down to bags, Ziploc bags, gloves, right? Or anything to go ahead and capture evidence, okay? Physical evidence. Also, interviewing the injured, the ill, witnesses, supervisors to determine the accident cause adequately, right? Data analysis and practices that should include reviewing the incident photos, interview notes, statements, reviewing corporate safety policies, reviewing equipment, materials, and chemical manufacturers' manuals and instructions. Also reviewing any other data or evidence gathered during the investigative process. So this is important that as we're going through the investigative process and practices, we include all of these. So there's a lot of research, there's a lot of data contributing factors that surfaces during an investigation. So we definitely want to make sure that we give that a lot of attention. Okay, it's all about minimizing or eliminating the same issue from ever happening again. How do we do it? What is the best way to do it? Always trying to dig down to the root cause, regardless of whichever investigative tool we use. Like we said, the 5 why sequence of events, right? And root cause analysis are the most popular ones, or at least the most popular ones in our industry. And don't forget this, right? Is that in closing, root cause analysis process, hey, it helps us identify systemic management level deficiencies and fix them so that these issues do not happen again. That is the most important thing that we can remember. And like I said, no one to blame here. We don't blame employees, we don't blame management, we blame the problem and we fix the problem. All right, so good luck, y'all. Go ahead and move on to module 225, and we'll see everybody on the backside.